Hey there! Today, we're diving into a dating phenomenon that can leave even the most confident among us scratching our heads: submarining. For those unfamiliar with the term, submarining is when someone you're dating or talking to suddenly pulls back and goes silent, only to resurface later as if nothing happened. It's a frustrating experience that can leave you questioning everything about the relationship. But here's the thing: just because she's gone quiet doesn't necessarily mean she's gone for good. In many cases, submarining is a temporary dive, not a permanent disappearance. In this video, we're going to explore 9 key signs that suggest she's likely to resurface rather than vanish into the depths forever. From the way she communicates, or doesn't, to her social media activity and interactions with mutual friends, we'll help you read between the lines and gauge the likelihood of her return. Now, it's important to note that no one sign is conclusive, and everyone's situation is unique. But by understanding these common submarining behaviors, you'll be better equipped to navigate the uncertainty and make informed decisions about how to proceed. So whether you're currently in the midst of a submarining situation or simply want to be prepared for the possibility, keep watching. We're about to shed some light on this perplexing dating trend. Before we dive deeper, if you're looking to level up your dating game, click on the link below for a free 1-hour chat with our expert coaches. What is submarining in the context of dating? Before we dive into the signs, let's take a moment to clarify exactly what we mean by submarining in the dating context. Submarining is a term that's risen to prominence in recent years, particularly in the age of online dating and constant digital communication. In essence, it refers to a situation where someone you're dating or in contact with suddenly goes silent and drops off the radar, often without any explanation. This disappearance can last days, weeks, or even months. During this time, you might not hear a word from them. No texts, no calls, no social media interaction. It's as if they've submerged themselves underwater, completely out of reach and out of sight. Then, just as suddenly as they disappeared, they resurface. They pop back up in your life, often acting as if no time has passed and no disappearance ever occurred. They might pick up the conversation right where it left off, or they might offer a brief apology or explanation before moving on. Submarining can be a confusing and emotionally taxing experience, as it leaves the person on the receiving end questioning the status of the relationship and the reasons for the silence. It's a situation that requires patience, perspective, and a keen eye for the signs that suggest a resurfacing is likely. 1. Sudden drop in communication. The first and perhaps most obvious sign of submarining is a sudden drop in communication frequency. If you've been talking to someone regularly, whether that's daily texting or weekly phone calls, and that pattern suddenly changes, it could be a sign that submarining is afoot. Here's what to look for. The drop in communication is noticeable and sustained, but it's not a complete cessation. She might go from texting you multiple times a day to once every few days, or from calling you every weekend to letting a couple of weekends pass without a word. This is a key distinguishing factor between submarining and ghosting, another well-known dating disappearance act. In ghosting, the communication stops entirely and permanently. The person vanishes without a trace, never to be heard from again. In submarining, however, there's still a trickle of communication, even if it's significantly reduced. This sporadic contact is what keeps the door open for a potential resurfacing. It's as if she's signaling, "I'm still here, just beneath the surface." Of course, a drop in communication could also be a sign of waning interest or a busy period in her life, but if it's coupled with some of the other signs we'll discuss, it's a strong indicator that submarining might be at play. 2. Busy excuses. When a submariner does surface for air, it's often with an excuse at the ready. And more often than not, that excuse revolves around being extraordinarily busy. If you do hear from her during her submersion period, pay attention to how she explains her absence. Does she frequently mention work deadlines, family obligations, or personal issues that are consuming her time and energy? Does she emphasize how much she has on her plate and how little free time she has? While these excuses might be genuine, we all go through busy spells in life. Their recurrence is what raises the submarining flag. If every time you hear from her she's apologizing for her absence and stressing her packed schedule, it suggests a pattern rather than a one-off occurrence. Here's the thing: if someone truly wants to make time for you, they will, no matter how busy they are. They'll find a way to send a quick text, make a short call, or plan a future meetup. Consistently using busyness as a blanket excuse for extended silences suggests that you might not be a top priority. So while an occasional busy excuse is nothing to worry about, a string of them is a common sign of submarining behavior. 3. Keeping your things. Here's a less obvious but potentially telling sign. If you've left any personal belongings at her place, pay attention to what happens to them during her submarine phase. If she's planning on resurfacing and continuing the relationship, she's likely to hold on to your things. Whether it's a piece of clothing, a book you lent her, or a toothbrush you left for overnight stays, she'll keep these items safe, even if she's not in active contact with you. Why is this significant? Because holding on to your belongings suggests an expectation of future interaction. It's a subtle way of saying, I'm assuming I'll see you again, so I'll keep these here for when you need them. On the flip side, if she goes out of her way to return your things during her period of silence, it could be a sign that she's tying up loose ends and preparing for a permanent disappearance. Of course, this sign alone isn't conclusive. She might return your things for practical reasons or out of a sense of tidiness, but combined with other submarining behaviors, her treatment of your belongings can offer insight into her intentions and expectations for the future of your relationship. 4. Occasional check-ins. Another common sign of submarining is the occasional check-in message. These are the texts or messages that pop up sporadically during her period of silence, often without any specific prompt or context. The content of these check-ins can vary. She might ask how you're doing, share a funny meme or article she thought you'd like, or simply say that something reminded her of you. The key is that these messages aren't part of a sustained conversation. They're standalone pings, often with significant gaps in between. So what's the significance of these check-ins? On one level, they serve to remind you of her presence. Even if she's not engaging in regular, in-depth communication, these messages signal that you're still on her mind and that she hasn't forgotten about you entirely. On another level, these check-ins can be a way of gauging your interest and receptiveness. By dropping a casual message, she can see how you respond. Do you reply immediately and enthusiastically, or do you take your time and keep it brief? Your reaction gives her valuable information about where you stand and how much effort she needs to put in when she does decide to fully resurface. So if you find yourself receiving these sporadic, seemingly out-of-the-blue messages during a period of submarining, know that they're likely part of a larger pattern and strategy. If you're enjoying today's tips on dating, don't forget to like and comment. For a deeper transformation, consider our free 60-minute strategy call. You'll learn how to meet more women and date with newfound confidence. Click the link in the pinned comment to reserve your session. 5. She likes your social media posts. In the age of social media, one doesn't need to be in direct contact to keep tabs on someone's life. This is a fact that submariners often use to their advantage. Even if she's not actively communicating with you, pay attention to her engagement with your social media posts. Does she consistently like your Instagram photos, react to your Facebook statuses, or retweet your Twitter musings, even during her submarine phase? This continued social media engagement is a way of maintaining a connection and presence in your life, even from beneath the surface. It's a subtle reminder that she's still there, still aware of what you're up to, and still interested on some level. Moreover, social media engagement is a low-effort way of keeping the lines of communication open. It requires far less investment than a direct message or phone call, but it still serves to maintain a link and leave the door open for future interaction. Of course, social media engagement alone doesn't guarantee a submarining situation. Some people are just avid likers and reactors. But if her social media activity persists, even as her direct communication dwindles, it's a sign that she might be employing submarining tactics. 6. She responds when contacted. Here's another key distinguishing factor between submarining and ghosting: response to contact. When you reach out to a submariner during their period of silence, they're likely to respond, even if their response is delayed or brief. This is in stark contrast to ghosting, where any attempts at contact are met with radio silence. A ghoster will typically ignore your messages and calls, making it clear that they've cut off communication entirely. A submariner, on the other hand, will usually reply when directly contacted. Their response might come hours or even days later, and it might be shorter or less engaged than their pre-submarine communication, but they will acknowledge your outreach. This responsiveness, however limited, is another way of keeping the connection alive and the possibility of resurfacing open. By replying, even minimally, the submariner signals that the line of communication isn't completely severed, just temporarily muffled. Of course, the content and tone of the response matter too. If her replies are consistently curt, disinterested, or apologetic about her lack of communication, it suggests that the submarining might be a prelude to a more permanent fade-out. But if her responses, however delayed, still show engagement and interest, it's a sign that the submarining is likely a temporary dip, rather than a final dive. 7. Checking up on mutual friends. Submariners often employ indirect methods of keeping tabs on you, and one of these is through mutual friends. If you share a social circle, Pay attention to any unusual or sudden interest she shows in your shared acquaintances during her submarine phase. She might reach out to these friends to ask how you're doing, what you've been up to, or if you've mentioned her at all. She might try to gather information about your current dating life, your work situation, or your general well-being. This behavior serves a few purposes. Firstly, it allows her to gather information about you without having to directly engage. She can get a sense of where you're at and how you're faring without breaking her submarine silence. Secondly, it serves as another reminder of her presence. Even if she's not communicating with you directly, making herself known in your social circle keeps her on your radar and prevents you from forgetting about her entirely. Finally, it can be a way of gauging your feelings and reactions. If you express concern, confusion, or frustration about her absence to your mutual friends, she'll likely catch wind of it and factor that into her submarining strategy. So if you start hearing from shared acquaintances that she's been asking about you, take it as another sign that a resurfacing might be on the horizon. 8. Keeping the door open. When a submariner does briefly surface for air, pay close attention to how she ends your interactions. Does she close the conversation with definitive plans or clear expectations for when you'll talk again? Or does she leave things open-ended and uncertain? Submariners often opt for the latter approach. They might end a text conversation with something like, "It was great catching up. Let's talk again soon," without specifying when soon might be. Or they might say, "I'd love to get together when things calm down," without offering any concrete timeline. These open-ended closings are strategic. They allow the submariner to submerge again without making any definite commitments, while also suggesting that the silence is temporary and that future contact is intended. It's a way of keeping you on the hook without actually promising anything. It maintains the possibility and expectation of continued interaction, even as it leaves the specifics vague and non-committal. In contrast, if she ends your interactions with clear plans or firm commitments for future contact, it suggests that her submarining might be coming to an end and that she's ready to resurface more fully. So as you analyze your communications for signs of submarining, don't just focus on the frequency and content of the messages, but also on how they conclude. The endings can often reveal a lot about her intentions. 9. Reappearing with apologies. The defining feature of submarining is the eventual resurfacing, and this is often accompanied by a flurry of apologies and explanations. When a submariner finally decides to fully resurface and re-engage in consistent communication, they typically acknowledge their period of absence and offer justifications for it. These can range from the aforementioned busy excuses to more personal revelations about stress, family issues, or mental health struggles. The key here is that the apologies and explanations are offered as a way of contextualizing and excusing the submarine behavior. They're designed to elicit understanding and sympathy, to paint the silence as a necessary response to difficult circumstances, rather than a reflection of disinterest or disregard. These resurfacing messages often also include expressions of continued interest and desire to reconnect. The submariner might emphasize how much they've missed you, how often they've thought about you, or how excited they are to finally be able to focus on your relationship again. The sincerity of these sentiments can be difficult to gauge, and it's up to you to decide whether the apologies and explanations feel genuine and sufficient. But their presence is a clear sign that the submarining period is coming to an end, and that the submariner is seeking to re-establish regular contact and potentially deepen your connection. So now that you know how to recognize those signs, what's next for you? Discover the signs she thinks you're good-looking, or learn the things you should never do when a girl looks at you. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.